Hey guys, today we're going to be working on this 212 Ducar engine build. So this is going to be part 2, and mainly I'm going to be working with the, we're going to cut some valve reliefs, and right now I'm just going to weigh these lifters up. Sometimes just the small things, like this one is 20.2 grams. And this one's 20. So yeah, I'll just use the lighter lifters. That's the way to go. And today, mainly, we're just going to be trying to get some fitting done on some of our parts. Now, I had purchased a, I'm just going to clean these crankshafts and pieces up. You know, we're going to do a trial assembly. You guys remember this deal. But I had purchased a piston from the Bay place, and it had already had the valve reliefs cut in it. But I ran into a little issue, and sometimes this is you'll get into this. Now, when I cut my valve reliefs in mine, I always like to do it when they're 50 thousandths down the hole, and this one was cut at top dead center. So what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to do a preliminary mock-up of the engine here, and I'm going to install this piston, and then I'm going to cut a valve relief with that piston sitting down 50 thousandths in the hole. And that's really, yeah, this thing's got a burr on it too. Well, that's no good. We're going to have to work on this pin bore of this piston. And what I like to do, I'll start off with this wrist pin, and I've got like I think it's a 320 grit sanding block here. It may be 240. I can't remember. But all I'm doing, I'm just roughing it up. And I know some of you guys have probably said, "Oh my God, what's he doing? He's putting scratches on that wrist pin." And yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm putting some scuffs on the wrist pin, some little fine scratches. You see those? Yeah. Now that's just a place for oil to pool up, so we can get some lubrication in there. And you know, we're not taking any we're not taking like 10 thousandths off or anything. We're just kind of scuffing up the surface. And you can do this with Scotch-Brite too, but I kind of like to use the like a sanding block or some sanding paper. And this is 1000 grit. You know, I'm just going to run this over here, or this may even be 1200. I don't know. But just to remove if I've got any burrs or anything left over. And of course, we're going to clean the grit off. Spray a little carb cleaner on there, or brake cleaner, whatever you got handy. And today I'm just going to be using a little Marvel Mystery Oil. Normally I would just use like, you know, WD-40 or something like that, just to check this fitting. But I have this Marvel Mystery Oil handy today, so there it is. And this piston still has a burr on the bore. I don't like that. Yeah. And it could have been a slight defect in the piston, the way it was made, or it could have been roughed up. I don't know. But sure enough, that one side is has a burr in it. And this pin, it's still kind of tight in the bore. Yeah, that's I don't like that. So what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to open this bore up on this wrist piston a little bit. And the way we're going to do that, I'm going to use this little flex hole. Now this is like a, I think it's 320 grit. It may be 240, 280, but it's just a 3/4 inch flex hole. And you can pick these up about anywhere, guys. Just a little ball home. And the wrist pin, you know, it's right at a little over, it's about 709 thousandths or so. So, you know, a 3/4 inch flex hone would be fine for this. I'm putting a little light oil on there. Just using Marble Mystery Oil for now because it's handy. But you can use WD-40, or you can use cutting oil or honing oil or whatever you got handy. If nothing else, if you got a can of the PB Blaster laying around, as long as it's got a little lubrication, that's fine. And so what you'll do, you'll hone this piston out a little bit, and then clean up all your grit and stuff off of there. Wipe them out clean with, I like to use paper towels when I want to get it really clean. So, and let's get a fresh paper towel. Yeah. And so what we're doing here, we're enlarging the bore of this piston to accept that wrist pin and give that wrist pin some more clearance. And you may have to do this 2 or 3 times. And I found it there's a couple ways you can do this. And after you get to if you get to where you've done several, you'll figure out little shortcuts. Like if you have a lot to remove from a pin bore, let's say you got a 715 thousandths pin and you want to open this piston up to accept that, you take it over to the parts washer tank or solvent tank, and let the solvent blow over it, and that'll keep those stones cleaned out while you hone it, and it'll remove more material. And the way I'm doing it here, well, that's still too tight. The way I'm doing it, I'm just kind of letting the stones stay kind of mucked up with the grit and stuff, and leaving the stones dirty, so it'll kind of hone a little slower, take a little less out at a time. Because I only want, maybe a thousandth or so, or half a thousandth, just enough to make that get that burr out of that wrist pin and area, and to allow my wrist pin to slide within the bore a lot easier. And the way I do it, I started on one side, and I remember, take it out halfway, and then flip it over to the other side. That way you hone about the same out of each side of your wrist pin. If I was like inserting it in the same side every time, well, that means I would be opening up one side larger than the other. And, we don't want to do that. And my can is about out of carburetor clean. It's about time to grab another can of the discount carb cleaner here. Well, just keep cleaning it up. And if it don't work this time, I'll just, since you guys got the hang of it now, I'll just, I'll cut out and finish honing this thing and bring you back when I'm done. But you get the idea. And we'll go with the Marble Mystery Oil again. And again, I'm just using this because it's handy, guys. If you got WD-40 or some sort of penetrating oil or something, or some sort of light oil laying around, that's fine. And we still have a burr, feels like. It's moving a little better. That's still too tight for my taste, so. Yeah, we're going to have to do a little more work on this. Pretty stiff. So, I'll run this through again. I'll bring you right back. Now, all right, I've honed it out another round. And now we've got some movement, yes. And that's the way, just as long as I can move it with my pinky, that's fine. If I was doing this for like a race build, I would be using WD-40, and I would hone that wrist pin boss area to where the wrist pin would slide down through it just with its own weight by gravity alone. But I don't want to make it that loose on this one because this is not a race engine. Yeah, I'm going to have a little performance out of it, but race engines, need to be a little looser on the tolerances on so everything remains free and you get lubrication in there. And I'm just going to use these. I really don't like these circle wrist pin clips, the retainers. I'd rather have spiral locks, but I can't find spiral locks to fit these pins. I don't know if anybody knows somebody makes them. Leave me a message down in the comments, because I would sure like to use spiral locks. And at this time, like everything else, all the good locks where you could reach in and squeeze them with a pair of needle nose pliers or something, all those are sold out everywhere. I can't find those either. So, but sure enough, if anybody knows of where I could locate spiral locks for this 709 thousandths pin, let me know. And the way I do this, guys, sometimes I'll just go with the open end away from me and kind of push in on the back end. And it's just however you prefer to do it. The main thing is, you know, when you install these wrist pin retainers, these clips here, be paranoid. Okay, double check, triple check to make sure they are in the groove all the way around. And I cannot stress that enough. This is a very important thing here. Guys, I have lost an engine because of one of these things popping out on me. So, you know, I'm really paranoid about it now, and I recommend everybody be a little paranoid when it comes to your wrist pin retainers. Now, I've already checked my clearances on the crank and the rod. So I know I've got 3/1000 oil clearance, and I don't use plastic gauge because, you know, those crankshafts, they come, most of them will be out around a little bit anyway. And your plastic gauge will only tell you one spot on the crankshaft. Now, if you don't have a 1995 dial indicator from Harbor Freight, you can use dial plastic gauge if you have to. But just if you're going to be doing a lot of these engines or fooling with them, just go ahead and get you a little dial indicator, and just something that'll read within the thousandth scale. So, you know, you're going to be within a thousandth or two. You know, and I'm going to use my now I'm not going to worry about positioning the rings, because this is just a quick install and like a mock assembly, so I can get my valve release cut at the right height. And I'm noticing right here that bore is tight, and I mean it's tight. It should not, the piston should not be that tight in the bore. So I may end up actually honing this block a little bit, which is good. You know, it's better to straighten the bore in the block if you've got a little extra you can work with. But now if your piston is already, you know, loose in the bore, or right at whatever clearance you choose to use, you know, that kind of limits you to honing your bore to straighten it. But I usually like to put one of those constant pressure hones down through there and straighten that cylinder from the top to the bottom. That way it removes any taper, any high or low spots. And yeah, you guys know this drill. I'm just going to put a little oil on. And again, this is just going to be a temporary assembly. I'm not going to worry about torquing anything. I just mainly want to get it assembled to where I can raise that piston up there. And I still got to check my how far or how low the piston is sitting down in the hole at top dead center too. I think I was guesstimating last time we was looking at this around 15 to 17 thousandths down the hole. But if you remember, when I checked it, I did not have the side cover on either. So yeah, I didn't want to bore you to death with me running those rod bolts up, so I just cut back to where I'm just going to tighten them down here. And again, no torque, just making sure they're taut to where it don't have any gap there on me or anything. You guys know how this goes when you're fooling with these engines. Oh, whoop, wait a minute. That's the wrong side cover. No, that's going on something else. Okay. Let's get the right side cover over here. There we go. Yep. I better put my alignment dials in there. Get those out of the small parts paranoia bag. Because you know I would have lost them if they weren't in. If I didn't put them in that bag, they would have been gone. Now I know some of you guys are saying, "Wait a minute, Chris, you don't have a camshaft in there." We're not going to assemble it to run it. I just want the rod and the piston and the crank in there for now. And we'll be taking this right back apart here in a few minutes. You guys remember how it goes. Clean up my mess a little bit. We'll stick a couple of bolts in here. And I'll just kind of snug them down to make sure everything is zeroed on the alignment pins. Everything's seated. Great. Wonderful shot of the back of my hand. Sorry, guys. And again, I'm not going to torque these. I'm just going to snug them down good. Make sure my side cover's up. Yep, we're good. Yeah. See, now that piston's too tight in the bore. I should be able to, if everything was right, if this is going to be a good running engine, when you get your piston and rod assembled in there, you should be able to just grab that crankshaft and give her a turn. And it should move that piston up or down in the bore. This one's too tight. That's too tight. And I'm gonna put the clutch bolt back in so I can turn this. And I'm just using a 3/8 bolt there, a 3/8 nut rather, for a spacer. And now I'll just put my 10mm on there so I can spin the crankshaft. I mean, they've got those crankshaft turning things and stuff, but you know, this bolt works for me. Now, work this back and forth and get it up there at really true top dead center, because you know it's got a little spot in there where the piston stops right before it starts going down. And you got to find that happy place there where it's right at top dead center. Now, let's see, that looks like about 16 thousandths down the hole to me. So that's good. That's good. That's for a Hemi build. That's kind of where I want to be. Now this is a valve relief cutter, and the way this one works, I'll be working on the exhaust valve because that's the main one I'm concerned with. You remove the exhaust valve and you slide that relief cutter up in there just like you would a valve, but this has got cutters on the bottom side. So, and there's the stop. Slide that down, and we'll be setting that here in a few minutes, but oh yeah, gotta put my alignment dials back in here, and got my head gasket. Head gasket needs to be in place when you do this. And you know, some guys that will cut those at top dead center, and that's fine, you know, if that's the way you want to do yours. Now I'll tell you why I like to do mine. I like to cut mine with a piston 50 thousandths down the hole, because that's where you're going to start running into problems. And you know, as far as cam lift, you know, you don't have to worry about, oh gosh, my cam's got 500 lift. Will it hit the piston? Well, when your cam's at max lift, the valve is nowhere near the piston. Where you get into trouble at is on the exhaust stroke. The duration and the overlap of your valves there on the cam, At one point, both of those valves are open. When that thing is on the exhaust stroke and it's rushing, that piston's going to the top of the cylinder, it is headed straight, it's chasing the exhaust valve because the exhaust valve is open, excuse me, and it's closing. So that piston is racing towards that exhaust valve as it's closing. And before the exhaust valve closes, the intake kicks open as well. That's your overlap. At one point, both of the valves are open at the same time. And it don't seem like it would work, but yeah, it does. So when that piston is about 50 thousandths down the hole, coming up towards that exhaust valve, that's about where you're going to start running into trouble. So when I cut my valve reliefs, I let the piston go at 50 thousandths in the hole, and then we'll place a valve relief cutter, a valve relief cut right there at that point. And you know, these are new cutters here. These are the ones I just had purchased these, and I didn't have anything this small. These are like 5.5 millimeters. But you know, I think it's a good idea if you're gonna, especially if you're gonna be running a high duration camshaft, and it's a good idea to go ahead and cut your valve reliefs in the piston. With these Hemi engines, you don't have as much trouble with the non-Hemi types because the angle of the valves is a whole lot flatter. You know, these valves have a heck of an angle, so they're coming in kind of sideways towards the top of the piston, and that puts the edge of the valve really close to the top of that piston. So when you start getting around that 50 thousandths mark, that's what you gotta start looking. And there's other ways to do it to check. You know, you can put some clay on the top of your piston, and you know, have your cam installed and everything, and then run it through a couple of cycles. Then measure on your clay what depth you have, where the valve is hitting, how much the valve is hitting. But the way these cutters work, and this one is no exception. I think I've got a 25 feeler gauge and a 26, so I've got 51 thousandths thickness there, and I'm having to run that feeler gauge between the stop and the top of the valve seat. Now it's kind of difficult on these engines because the top of the valve seat is like it's cone shaped, and you got to get in there really tight to get a spot with your feeler gauge just hitting it. But yeah, so you know, you'll bring that cutter down to touch the top of the piston, and then you'll slide your feeler gauge between the, see that? Yeah, see that valve guide? It's very, very tough to get in there. That's why I'm like triple checking everything, making sure that that's right. I feel a little drag there. Yeah, I feel it. And what this will do, that stop will let me cut down the total depth of 51 thousandths only, and then that's it. I could sit there and turn that thing with a drill all day, and it would not cut any further than 51 thousandths. And I'm just using a little small 1/4-inch drill for this because this is not something. It's not like you're drilling a 1/2-inch hole or anything. You just run it down gently and let it touch the top of the piston, and it'll grind out a little bit at a time. And I've got to, oh, I should have done that. Those guides are too spindly. Yeah, that's better. Thank you. Yeah, those rods of 5.5 millimeters is not very thick, and so you know you could easily bend one. And I hope I didn't just bend mine. But I'm gonna pour a little Marvel Mystery Oil down in there so I can make sure I get. Oh, wow, that's too much. It's okay though. It's we're gonna be lubricated now for sure, but. Yeah. My drill was a little loose, but that's okay. That's all right. I believe we got it. And you know, it's already had some release cut, and they would have probably been fine, but we're gonna see what the difference is, because remember, if your piston is in different locations, if it's at top dead center, that means the valve will strike it at a different location. So if it's at 50 thousandths depth, where you'll first start getting into trouble, that valve will strike the piston first at a different area on the dome, or excuse me, on the top. And yeah, I've got some cuttings in there. Boy, I've made a mess. And looks like, yes, it did. I would have been way off if I'd ran that piston like it was. See if I can get you closer where you guys can see. Yeah. See, the top of the valve would have been striking it right about the center of where that cut's at. So now I'm okay now. I feel comfortable. And I've cleaned up my mess a little bit, but now we've got to take all this stuff apart. And I got to clean the rest of that aluminum shavings and stuff out of there. But normally, you know, we would repeat the same thing on the intake. And I'm not going to, you know, sit here and run through everything with you guys. Just wanted to give you an idea about, you know, what you'd want to do if you wanted to cut valve reliefs. And you don't have to have a specialized tools. You know, I've used just a regular exhaust valve. You can take and grind some slots in it with a Dremel tool, and to where you can turn a valve into a cutter. I've seen guys, they would sweat a piece of tool steel as a cutter on there with you know, just a brazing rod, and then use that. You know, you don't have to have the specialty tools. You can pretty much make your own thing. And there's other ways too. I've seen guys on YouTube taking and glue some sandpaper, or you know, some rough sandpaper to the top of a valve, and use a drill and run and spin. You kind of sand, you know, valve release in the top of your piston. So there's a lot of different ways to get it done. Now here I'm just checking to make sure I have plenty of clearance between that rod and up there at the top of the block, and it is. I had the 25 and 26, which was 51. Then I added a 35, so that makes this what, 80. Yeah, 86. So, and it's really loose, so I've got plenty of clearance. I'm glad of it too. That 58 millimeter stroker we did, boy, we really had to grind a bunch on the side of that block up there. And it wasn't so much depth. It was just where they had already ground some. We had to widen it out because that billet rod was wider. So, you know, it's not too much of a big deal, but this one seems to be clearing great. And yeah, this is tight. This is too tight. And I'm not happy with that. That's too tight in the bore. So I'm going to end up honing this block. But first of all, I've got to check my rings and see if I've got enough to work with here. Because when I hone that block, I'm going to actually be making the bore a little larger. Not a whole lot, but a little larger. And what that's going to do is going to open up my ring gap. So if I don't have a tight enough ring gap started out with, I'm going to end up with too much ring gap, and that's bad. We don't want too much. Now I'm going to start with the minimum that I would wanted to have would be 7 to have left over, but oh, that's loose. Yeah. And yeah, that's 7. Dang. So that means, you know, if I hone the block, even if I had 7, you know, that would probably open it on up to 8 or 9. Well, let me see exactly what we do have here. That's a 9 and it's loose. Oh man. And what do we got here? Yeah. Okay. Looks like it's going to be a 10. So, yeah, I'm going to end up having to order a set of 10 O-rings for this thing so I can file fit them. But that's okay. You know, this will be the end of part 2, guys. And hang tough. We'll be around to part 3 next week. Thanks for hanging out with me. We'll see you next time.